My partner planned a New Year's breakup, but I discovered the truth just in time. New Year's Eve was supposed to be the start of something beautiful. A fresh beginning, a chance to leave behind everything that didn't serve us and step into a year full of new possibilities. At least, that's how I envisioned it. But what I didn't know was that my partner, someone I thought I knew so well, was planning to break up with me that night. It wasn't until I accidentally stumbled upon a conversation that I discovered the truth. And let me tell you, finding out was one of the most shocking and gut-wrenching moments of my life. I had no idea what was coming, but once I did, I was determined to turn the tables before it was too late. It had been a hectic few weeks leading up to New Year's Eve. The holiday season always brought its fair share of stress, last-minute shopping, family gatherings, and the usual chaos that comes with trying to celebrate in style. But there was something else hanging in the air, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. For the most part, everything seemed fine with my partner, Jason. We had been together for about 2 years, and although we weren't perfect, I genuinely believed we had something solid. Sure, we had our ups and downs, but I never imagined that this New Year's Eve would mark the end of our relationship, at least not from my side. Jason had been acting a little distant lately. He was distracted, his mind always somewhere else. I chalked it up to the stress of the holidays. We were both busy with work and planning for our New Year's plans, so I figured it was just the usual holiday burnout. But the more I thought about it, the more I noticed that he wasn't really present. He wasn't as engaged in conversations, he seemed a little colder than usual, and whenever I tried to talk about the future, our future, he would change the subject or brush me off. At first, I ignored it. I didn't want to overthink things, especially not around the holidays. But as we approached New Year's Eve, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I decided to surprise him with something special for the evening. We were going to a fancy rooftop party to ring in the new year, and I had planned a small gift for him, something meaningful, something I thought would show him how much I cared. But as I walked around the apartment that evening, wrapping his gift and getting ready, something inside me told me I needed to check his phone. I didn't know why I thought of it, but the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. I had never felt the need to snoop before, but this time, something felt different. I figured I'd just check his messages quickly, not out of mistrust, but more to ease the anxiety that had started building up inside me, and that's when I saw it. I wasn't sure what I was expecting when I unlocked Jason's phone, but I definitely didn't expect what I found. His messages were mostly routine, friends asking about New Year's plans, work stuff, and memes. But then I scrolled down to an earlier conversation that caught my eye. It wasn't a conversation I'd ever seen before, and I recognized the name immediately, Maya. Maya was someone he had known for a while, an old friend from college, someone I had always been friendly with when she'd been around. I never thought anything of their friendship. Jason had always mentioned her in passing, and I assumed their bond was platonic. But as I read through the conversation, my heart sank. Maya had sent him a message that was full of concern. "Are you sure about this? The timing feels off, especially with the holidays. You've been talking about this for months, but I don't know if now's the right time." And Jason's response, "I know, I just need to make it through tonight. It'll be easier after New Year's, and then I'll have an excuse to leave. I don't want to hurt her right now. I know it's going to crush her." The air in the room felt like it froze. My hand trembled as I scrolled down further, trying to make sense of what I was reading. He was planning to break up with me that night. After everything we'd been through, after all the love and the moments we shared, he had decided that it was over, and he was planning to do it in the most heartless way possible, without even giving me the chance to prepare, to fight for us, or to have an honest conversation. I felt nauseous, like the world was spinning out of control. How could he do this? How could he plan to end things when we had been making all these plans for the new year together? I had no idea it was coming. The idea of him leaving me, of my relationship crumbling in the span of a single night, was unfathomable. But there was no denying it. I had the proof. He had already made his decision, and I was just a few hours away from being blindsided by the person I loved. The anger started building up inside me. How could I just sit back and let this happen? How could I let him break my heart without even letting me see it coming? I realized then that I wasn't going to let this happen. I wasn't going to let him walk out on me without at least hearing my side of things. I needed to figure out what to do next, and fast. I couldn't just sit there and wait for the night to unfold the way Jason had planned. My heart was racing, but I knew I had to take action. I wasn't going to be blindsided. I was going to confront him before he could execute his plan. I quickly put his phone back in its usual place, trying to calm my nerves. I didn't want to give away anything, not yet. I needed to confront him in person, face to face, and I had to do it before the evening went any further. Jason was getting ready in the other room. I could hear him moving around, probably thinking about the party we were supposed to attend. I grabbed the gift I'd wrapped earlier, something I'd put so much thought into, and held it in my hands. It felt heavier than it should have, like a symbol of everything that had gone wrong in the past few hours. I walked into the living room, where he was putting on his jacket. He looked up and smiled, the kind of smile I'd seen 1,000 times before. "Ready for the night?" he asked, his voice warm and casual. I wasn't ready to play along anymore. My voice was steady, but with an underlying urgency I couldn't hide. "Jason, we need to talk." His expression faltered for just a second, but then he nodded. "Okay, sure. What's going on?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I know what you're planning tonight." His face went pale, his eyes widening in disbelief. I wasn't sure if he thought I was joking, or if he had actually been caught off guard. But whatever it was, I wasn't about to let him off easy. "I saw your conversation with Maya. I saw what you're planning to do." Jason stood still, his mouth opening and closing, like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. It felt like the longest moment of my life. His silence was suffocating. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly now. "You're planning to break up with me tonight? Without even talking to me about it first? Without even giving me a chance to understand what's going on in your head?" He finally found his voice, but it wasn't the comforting tone I had been used to. It was defensive. "I didn't want to hurt you, okay? I didn't want to ruin the holidays. I thought it would be easier to do it after the new year, when things calmed down." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Easier? Easier for who? You've been planning this behind my back for weeks, and you think it's easier for me to just be blindsided tonight?" I could feel the frustration building inside me, but I kept it contained. I didn't want to scream. I needed clarity, not chaos. Jason looked down, avoiding my eyes. "I didn't know how to tell you. Things just haven't been the same, and I didn't know how to fix it." I paused, trying to process everything he was saying. The realization hit me all at once. He hadn't been honest with me. Not about his feelings, not about his intentions. He had kept everything bottled up, and now he was trying to make it seem like this was somehow my fault. "I deserve better than that," I said quietly. The words came out more firmly than I had intended. I deserve honesty. I deserve the truth. But most of all, I deserve a chance to work through things, not just be discarded when things get hard. Jason's face softened, but it was too little, too late. "I'm sorry," he muttered, almost too quietly for me to hear. "You should have said something earlier," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "But now that I know, you have a choice. Either we try to fix this together, or you walk away, but you don't get to do this to me." He stood there for a moment, clearly torn, but I could see in his eyes that the decision had already been made. He had already checked out emotionally, even though he hadn't told me the truth. "I'm not sure what to say," he finally said. "Maybe we do need some space." I nodded. "Maybe we do. But don't think I'm just going to let this slide, Jason. This isn't something that can just be swept under the rug. You can't use me as a placeholder until you're ready to let go." There was a long silence, and then Jason sighed deeply. "You're right, you deserve more." And in that moment, I realized that I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his excuses. What I needed was to stand my ground and reclaim my power. I stood there, staring at Jason, unsure of what to say next. The tension in the room felt suffocating, and my heart was pounding. Part of me still wanted to fix things, to get back to the way we had been before all this uncertainty crept in. But the other part of me knew that things would never be the same after what had just been revealed. I couldn't simply ignore the fact that he had been planning to break up with me without giving me the chance to talk about it. Jason, for all his faults, seemed genuinely conflicted now. His usual confidence had faded, replaced by a look of uncertainty. For a moment, it almost seemed like he wanted to take it all back, to rewind and pretend none of this had happened. But I couldn't afford to play that game. I had learned something important in the last few hours. I couldn't wait around for someone else to decide my worth. I had to make a choice for myself. "I'm not sure what you want from me right now," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "If you want space, I can respect that. But I'm not going to wait around for you to decide if you want to be with me or not." Jason opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, signaling him to stop. "No, Jason. It's not about what you want anymore. It's about what I need. I need someone who is open with me, who will be upfront when things aren't working instead of planning to leave me in secret." He looked down at the floor, guilt washing over his face. "I never wanted to hurt you. You know that, right?" His voice was almost pleading, but I had heard enough of the same excuses. "I know," I said softly but firmly. "But you've already hurt me. And I need more than just words right now. I need actions, and I need to know that you're not just using me as a backup option." Jason remained silent, and for a few moments, we both just stood there. The weight of the conversation hung between us. It was clear that we were both at a crossroads. I didn't want to make the decision for him, but I knew that if he wasn't ready to fight for us, then I had to fight for myself. Finally, Jason spoke again, his voice lower now. "I think maybe we need to take a break to figure out what we really want." I nodded slowly. "I think that's a good idea. But don't think for a second that I'm just going to sit here and wait while you decide. I'm going to live my life, focus on what makes me happy, and see where that takes me." Jason didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. He turned away and walked toward the door, grabbing his jacket from the hook. As he left, he said, "I'm sorry." But as I stood there, watching him leave, I realized something important. I wasn't sorry. I wasn't sorry that I had stood up for myself. I wasn't sorry that I had called him out on his lies and manipulation. In fact, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. The truth was out, and no matter how painful it was, I could now move forward with the knowledge that I wasn't the one who had been holding us together. The days after Jason left were a whirlwind of emotions. I had moments where I felt a deep sense of relief, followed by waves of anger, confusion, and sadness. There were times when I questioned if I had made the right decision, but then I would remember his actions, his lies, and the way he had planned to end things without even giving me a chance to discuss it. It was hard, but I knew that I had made the best choice for myself. For the first time in a long time, I was focusing on me, not my relationship, not Jason's problems, but my own growth and well-being. I spent a lot of time reflecting on the relationship. Looking back, there were so many red flags I had ignored, so many moments when I had dismissed my own gut feelings because I didn't want to confront the truth. Jason hadn't just been dishonest, he had been selfish, thinking only of his own comfort while disregarding mine. I had let myself get so wrapped up in him and the idea of a perfect future that I had lost sight of what I truly deserved. But now, I had the opportunity to rediscover who I was without the weight of a relationship that had been built on uncertainty. I started doing things that made me happy, things I had put aside for too long. I reconnected with old friends, started picking up hobbies I had neglected, and took time to focus on my career and personal goals. One of the things that surprised me was how many people reached out to check on me, friends, family, even some coworkers who had noticed the change in my demeanor while I was with Jason. Everyone seemed to have known before I did that I wasn't in the right relationship. It felt comforting to have a support system in place, people who genuinely cared about me and wanted to see me thrive. And then there were the moments of self-discovery. I started going to therapy to work through the emotional baggage of the relationship. It was tough at first, but it helped me realize that I wasn't defined by the actions of others. I had the power to build a future on my own terms, and that was something I hadn't fully understood before. I was learning how to be independent again, how to trust myself, and how to set boundaries with people who didn't have my best interests at heart. I wasn't going to let Jason's betrayal dictate my happiness anymore. The future was mine to create. A few weeks after Jason left, I thought I had everything figured out. My life was slowly falling into a new rhythm, and I was starting to feel like myself again. I was enjoying my new sense of independence, and I even started dating again. Though I wasn't rushing into anything. I was focused on building my own life and finding out who I truly was outside of a relationship. But just when I thought I had left everything behind, I received a message from someone I didn't expect. Jason's friend, Matt. Matt had been one of Jason's closest friends, and I'd always gotten along with him. But he was also the type of person who kept to himself when things got difficult. When I saw his name pop up on my phone, my stomach dropped. "Hey, my name. I know this might be weird, but I need to tell you something," the message started. "I've been thinking a lot about what's been going on, and I think you deserve to know the truth. Jason wasn't just planning to break up with you. There's more to the story than he's been letting on." My curiosity piqued, and I immediately texted him back, asking what he meant. I hadn't heard from Matt in ages, so I wasn't sure if this was just some random message or if he genuinely had something important to share. Matt quickly responded with a detailed message, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. Apparently, Jason had been hiding something from me for months. He'd been seeing someone else, someone he had met while we were still together. Matt had known about it, but he'd kept quiet, unsure of how to handle the situation. It wasn't until Jason started distancing himself from me that Matt had realized how serious it was. Jason had planned to break up with me on New Year's Eve, but that wasn't the real reason behind it. He was leaving me to pursue a relationship with this other woman. I sat there, stunned. For weeks I had been wondering what went wrong, why Jason had been acting so distant. But I had never imagined this. He had not only been dishonest about his intentions, but had been emotionally cheating on me. I had been right to confront him about his behavior, but the whole situation had been much worse than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just that he had planned to end things. It was that he had already moved on, and I had been the last one to know. Matt seemed genuinely sorry for what had happened and said that he didn't agree with what Jason had done, but he had felt trapped in the middle. "You didn't deserve that," he wrote. "Jason messed up, and I know it's not much, but I just wanted to let you know the truth." The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks, but at the same time, I felt a sense of relief. I wasn't crazy for feeling like something was wrong. There had been signs I had missed, but now it all made sense. Jason's actions hadn't been a result of me or anything I did. It was all about his own selfishness. The more I processed it, the more I realized that I was better off without him. If he could treat me this way, lie to me, and hide a whole other relationship behind my back, then he wasn't the person I thought he was. And I didn't need him in my life anymore. After hearing the full truth from Matt, I spent a couple of days in a mix of shock, disbelief, and anger. The betrayal stung, but I also felt this strange sense of clarity. Everything Jason had done, the distant behavior, the secretive conversations, the coldness, it all made sense now. And more importantly, it made me realize that I didn't need to waste any more time wondering if I could fix things or if I was to blame. I wasn't the problem. Jason was. I took a step back and started focusing on myself again. I had always been someone who cared deeply about relationships and making things work. But now, it was time to refocus that energy on building something stronger, my own future. I spent a lot of time reflecting on what I wanted from life, and one thing was clear. I deserved better than someone who would cheat and lie to me. It was painful, sure, but it was also liberating. The truth had come out, and now I had the power to make decisions based on what was best for me, not what was easiest or what Jason had decided for me. I dove into my passions, things I had put on the back burner while I was focused on the relationship. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't had time to hang out with, started a fitness routine that I'd been putting off, and worked on my personal goals. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living for myself, not for someone else. Then, about a week after the revelation, I received a call from Jason. He was trying to apologize. "I'm sorry," he said, sounding tired and defeated. "I never meant for things to end up like this. I shouldn't have done what I did. Can we talk about it? Maybe try to work things out?" I sat there for a moment, listening to the apology that I'd expected but didn't want to hear. Part of me wanted to yell at him, demand answers, but then I realized he didn't deserve my time or my energy. "No, Jason," I said firmly. "I think it's better if we don't talk. You've made your choices, and I've made mine. I'm moving on, and I don't want to look back." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "But we've been through so much together. Don't you think we can fix this?" I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "No, Jason, you've already shown me who you are, and that's not someone I want in my life." It felt final. It felt like the last shred of my old life with him had been cut off, and I could finally breathe. For so long, I had been trying to make excuses for his behavior, wondering if I could make things work, if I could fix what was broken. But now I realized the only thing that needed fixing was me, and I was already on that path. After the call with Jason, something shifted inside me. I felt lighter, as though a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had spent so much time fighting for a relationship that was never going to be healthy. And now that it was finally over, I could focus on healing. I didn't rush into anything. I wasn't interested in dating or jumping into another relationship to fill the void. What I wanted more than anything was to rediscover myself, to focus on my own well-being, my goals, and my happiness. I needed to learn how to be whole on my own again, without relying on anyone else for validation or emotional support. The first thing I did was take some time off work. I had been running on fumes for months, juggling a toxic relationship, my career, and my personal life. I needed space to breathe, think, and reset. I spent a few quiet days at home, decluttering my apartment, cleaning out the emotional baggage, both physically and mentally. It was therapeutic in ways I hadn't expected. I took up hobbies I'd neglected, like painting and yoga, things I used to enjoy before they were pushed aside. I even started cooking more, trying new recipes I had always wanted to experiment with. Each day felt like a small victory in regaining my own life. But the most important thing I did was reconnect with friends. Real friends, the ones who had stuck by me through thick and thin. They were a reminder of who I really was, and how important it was to nurture those relationships. They'd all been there for me when I needed support, and now I was ready to show them how much I appreciated them. We started hanging out more, sharing meals, and simply enjoying each other's company. It felt like I was rebuilding my social circle from the ground up. But this time, I wasn't just relying on one person to fill the void. I had a network, a foundation of support, and I wasn't going to take it for granted. It wasn't easy. There were days when I missed the companionship Jason had provided, or when I would feel a pang of sadness over the relationship we had lost. But those moments passed, and the peace that followed was worth it. I had regained my independence and my sense of self-worth. I also started working on personal growth. I had been through a lot in a short period, and I realized I wasn't going to let that define me in a negative way. I was learning how to set better boundaries, how to trust my instincts, and how to avoid making the same mistakes. This was the start of my new chapter, and I wasn't going to let anything or anyone hold me back. As the weeks passed, I began to notice changes in myself that went beyond just emotional healing. There was a newfound sense of confidence I hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't the kind of confidence that comes from external validation or a relationship, but the kind that came from knowing I had survived one of the most difficult periods of my life and had come out stronger for it. One of the most surprising things I found was how much more open I was to opportunities. Before, I had been so focused on Jason and our relationship, constantly worrying about where things were headed and what I could do to make him happy. But now, my energy was directed toward my own future. I was putting my heart and soul into my work, finding new ways to expand my professional skills, and even taking on new projects that I had been too hesitant to try before. It wasn't just about career growth either. I started connecting with people in ways I hadn't before. People who didn't have the emotional baggage of my past relationship hanging over our interactions. I felt free to explore friendships without the constraints of someone else's expectations. It was refreshing to feel like I could make decisions solely based on what I wanted, without worrying about how it would affect someone else. I also started thinking about what I wanted in a future relationship, when the time was right. I realized I had been too willing to settle for less than what I deserved. I had sacrificed pieces of myself to fit into a relationship that was never going to work. Now, I had a clearer idea of the kind of partner I wanted, someone who would respect me, communicate openly, and share in the kind of love that was based on mutual trust and honesty, not manipulation and lies. But perhaps the most significant change came when I was able to forgive myself for letting it all happen. I had spent a lot of time beating myself up, wondering why I had allowed someone like Jason to walk all over me. But as I reflected on it, I realized that I wasn't the one who had failed. I had loved honestly, I had trusted completely, and I had done my best. It wasn't my fault that Jason chose to betray that trust. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It wasn't about excusing his actions. It was about releasing the grip that resentment and anger had on me. By forgiving myself, I was finally able to let go of the past and focus on the future. I had learned, grown, and was ready for what came next. As I continued to heal, I realized how much I had changed, not just emotionally, but in every aspect of my life. My focus had shifted. What had once seemed like a huge loss was now a blessing in disguise. I had the space and freedom to build a future that was entirely mine, one that wasn't defined by anyone else's decisions or actions. I began to set new goals for myself, not only for my career, but for my personal life as well. I wanted to continue growing in ways that would make me proud of myself. I had always been someone who cared deeply about my relationships, but now I was learning to invest just as much energy into my own happiness. I took trips to places I'd always wanted to visit, spent weekends with my closest friends, and threw myself into my passions. I was creating a life that was mine and mine alone, and it felt incredibly empowering. As the months passed, I realized something else. The sadness I had once felt about Jason was gradually being replaced by gratitude for the lessons learned. I wasn't bitter about the end of the relationship anymore. Instead, I was thankful that I had been strong enough to let go when I needed to. I had learned to trust myself, to recognize my worth, and to stop accepting less than what I deserved. One day, I ran into Jason at a local coffee shop. It was an awkward encounter, and for a split second, I felt the sting of the past. But then, I saw him for what he truly was, someone who had made his choices, and someone whose choices had no place in my life anymore. I smiled politely and moved on. No hard feelings, just a recognition that both of us had grown and changed since we last spoke. Later that evening, I reflected on how far I had come. I realized that the most important part of this journey was the fact that I had taken control. I hadn't let Jason or anyone else dictate my worth, and I had shown myself just how strong and resilient I could be. I was no longer the person who would settle for someone who didn't value me. I was someone who had learned to value herself. It wasn't about revenge or getting back at anyone. It was about reclaiming my power. Jason had tried to leave me shattered, but instead, I had come out of the experience stronger, more self-assured, and more prepared for whatever the future had in store. It's funny how life can throw curveballs when you least expect it. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned from this experience is that no one has the power to define your worth but you. If you're going through something similar, whether it's a breakup, betrayal, or a tough chapter in your life, remember that you have the strength to move forward, to learn from it, and to come out stronger on the other side. If you've ever experienced something like this, I'd love to hear how you handled it. What did you learn, and how did you find the strength to move on? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found the story inspiring, please like, share, and subscribe for more. No matter what life throws at you, you're capable of overcoming it and becoming the best version of yourself. Thanks for listening, and always remember, you deserve the best.